Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah, and I'm here today with Jordan. And happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Jordan.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, man. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our awesome viewers. We really appreciate all of you guys. Here in the US, we got Thanksgiving going strong. Uh, as of the when this goes up, I'm probably going to be stuffing my face full of food. But in the meantime, at least we can talk about cars because if you are at your Thanksgiving table, and maybe you want to get away from the family bringing up politics, we can be your respite to talk about cars.
And today we have Jordan, who got a first look at the new Cadillac Vistiq. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm good, Isaiah. Thanks for having me back on. And yeah, we should start right there really quickly. Do you in the comments think it's Vistiq or Vistiq? Because I've not really argued, but everyone seems to have an opinion and it's really entertaining to me. I say Vistiq, but Isaiah, you've said Vistiq. Our friend Dom Nicnioni at the Batteries Included podcast says Vistiq. I mean, that seems to be popular, but it just makes you feel a bit more elevated. But either way, doesn't really matter. I'm just excited to talk about it because I think it is an interesting car, even though not that many people even knew this was coming.
Yeah, it is something that kind of came out of the sidelines for me and just saw it pop up on my feed out of nowhere. But they actually start introduced this car last year, 2023, in December. So it's been kind of on the minds of some people who are maybe really interested into Cadillac EVs. But let's kind of like jump into things here, kind of talk about specs, all the things that Cadillac has to offer. So I actually first want to kind of go into something that you mentioned during your video. You mentioned that the Vistiq is positioned as like a smaller, more globally focused Escalade. What makes you, I guess, exactly say that this is, globally positioned that way?
Yeah, well, basically, this does fall in line with the other IQ models. IQ, to back up, I guess, 30,000 foot view. IQ is GM, or I guess specifically Cadillac's terminology for electric. So they have the Cadillac Lyric, which is the most common one at the moment. The Escalade IQ, which I say Escalade IC because I just end all of them with IC, Lyric, Escalade IC. Vistiq, the Optic is also coming soon. That's a smaller one. And there's this one, and then the Celestic or Celestique, because it's so expensive. That's the one I pronounce that way. Is the other one. So there's kind of a myriad of electric Cadillacs coming out. Now I knew Escalade IQ is electric Escalade. That's pretty obvious, and Escalade is the big boy. I mean, for all of us who know that that's the uh, big American three-row SUV. So when I went to film the Vistiq, I was curious how they were positioning it, and that was actually their terminology, was that the Vistiq in Cadillac's mind is the kind of the global Escalade. They say that because the Escalade is just too big simply for many markets. Sure, we do find in some countries, especially a lot of bigger cities, but there are definitely plenty of markets that have, smaller streets, smaller vehicles. The Vistiq, although it looks smaller next to a Suburban or an Escalade, would actually look still pretty big in other markets. So that's where that all comes from. And I'm very curious to see how it does sell abroad, but also how it sells in the US. Like, is this too much of a middle ground? Where is it too big for like European markets, but then is it too small for the average American consumer? I'm curious what the sales figures are, but also what our audience thinks of this, because even in the video I did, which we can quickly plug right now, if you want to see walk around things on a bit more longer form video, go check out my video I did on Out of Spec reviews, because that shows a bit more hands-on with it, although that's the base model that I was able to film, the sport trim. Here are some of the visuals for our watchers. Can see Isaiah showing more of the nicer trims as well on some of the footage or the photos, but then you can see my blue car that I'm filming, which I think looks pretty good even in the base model. So that was kind of cool that Cadillac brought us a base model to film with. I couldn't drive it, but I was able to get hands-on and really check out the entry-level Vistiq, which I say base model, but you still get a lot of options as standard.
I think it's priced pretty competitively. Let's kind of go over some of the metrics here. So starts from $77,395. Any other key points that kind of stood out to you, Jordan?
Well, yeah, I guess like I said, the base, the as standard, the equipment as standard, I guess I should say, the AKG uh, sound system, which should be great, 23 speakers, and it does feature Dolby Atmos. I'm always curious about Dolby Atmos integration. I'm an Atmos enthusiast myself. I do have an Atmos home theater that I built at home, so I'm always like, ooh, a car with Atmos, how good is it, or how bad is it? Lucid actually has pretty decent Atmos, but then notably Rivian recently has had pretty rough experience with Atmos and their sound system in general. So it really does depend, but a lot of brands seem to be using Atmos as a selling point. So hopefully this is good. And then the other thing that stand out is just the acceleration, 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. That's blazing fast for a 3-row SUV. I don't care who you ask. Sure, a tri-motor Rivian will beat this, but still, this is very quick, and there are no powertrain levels. I mean, you just get dual motor, all-wheel drive on what is essentially the Lyric platform, but with spicier motors. I don't know if they're the same motor tuned up or different motors, but it is the Lyric wheelbase, it is the Lyric platform. And it's by standard, this is the power figure: 615 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds when you're using velocity max mode, which is a hilarious term. But yeah, there's no choosing between powertrains. So that's always interesting to see. Some companies, all you're choosing is the powertrain. Like notably with Tesla, it's almost like it's the same car. It's just, do you want single motor rear wheel drive or dual motor performance? It's largely the same everywhere else. Whereas this is different. It's like you get the AKG, you get the Super Cruise, and you get the nice dual motor functionality either way, no matter what trim.
Perfect. This vehicle seems like the market that Cadillac is searching for is those who don't really want an Escalade, something that big. And so it makes sense, right? On the global front, these big boy SUVs may not work, but they do want something standard that on a standard vehicle is excellent. And I think these metrics are total proof of that. Let's kind of talk a bit about some charging. And so this is we're in 2024, going on 2025. This vehicle still has CCS one. Um, Kind of, what is your opinion on seeing these new EVs, right? No, really not yet in production, that are still going to support CCS one today?
Great question, Isaiah. So notably, we did our podcast recently about the Ioniq 9 from Hyundai. That launches around the same time as this with J3400, or the NACS plug, as we all know and love. But this does release with CCS. Now, I am also, not to keep pitching questions to our viewers, but what do you guys think of that? Because sure, the rollout of supercharger access is really great. And of course, GM is supporting supercharger access. And so you would think it'd be nice, but also a lot of people just want maybe people are already using CCS. They don't want to deal with superchargers. I don't know. I feel like it's a either way, you're going to be using adapters if you want to use both networks. And I think a lot of people will probably use both networks. And I'm not sure what GM's, if this comes with some sort of fast charging plan. I don't know if you saw that in any of the reading or anything. Because a lot of cars, incentivize buying their car with like, oh, 3 years of such and such with Electro America, whatever. That's all I think actually a pretty terrible idea. Maybe a certain number of kilowatt hours would be fine, but it's not really a leader in charging either. So, talk about the port, CCS1 instead of using NACS. That's a bit disappointing, I think, in my opinion. I think they should have just jumped in with NACS, but I guess you have an adapter, then okay, that's fine. But they don't include the adapter, I don't think. It says an available adapter when you read online. But then you can access superchargers and CCS. But a lot of people are charging at home anyways with these, and I think that's where this thing really will shine and be totally fine for most people. It does not have class-leading charging whatsoever. I mean, 190 kilowatt peak is okay. We are expecting the same type of charging behavior as Cadillac Lyriq, but we haven't actually done a charging test on one, I don't think. So it's just I'm not super high hopes. Recently, I had also filmed the Cadillac Optic unveiling, and that one peaks at 150, which is just really a poor number for a 2024. Now 2025 was when that car comes out. Um, that's just not class leading. So I don't know if we expected class leading, but it could have been a cool mic drop moment if they had thrown something cool in here. But so far, it looks like 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, also the same as the Lyriq, with 190 kilowatt peak charging. So it should be okay, but not amazing. But like I said, if a lot of people will treat this, I think, as a family hauler around town. 300 miles range is their targeted range. And even if they don't hit that, I still think that's plenty for, again, like I said, around town. Um, it'll still do okay road tripping. And I would even argue that, sure, it'd be cool to have Taycan charging speeds, but the average family who road trips, like that's what I'm picturing in this, someone taking advantage of three rows. Each stop, if you have a family, you know is taking longer than 10 minutes. So they might not even want a crazy fast charge. And you might not want to go 300 miles between charges because, I don't know, kids' bladders. So it's just kind of that argument of we can argue all day like what's competitive versus what's necessary. And I guess they kind of went with the not so competitive standpoint. It may not blow our minds in our testing, but as long as the consumer is looking for this, they might be right up their alley.
I think this vehicle really represents and shows a similarity to a lot more of the EV competition that we see from like some Lucid Gravity, Rivian R1S, like the Ioniq 9. How do you think this vehicle fares compared to some of these vehicles, not only in some of its specs, but as well as its size and configuration?
Yeah, the size is interesting. I was trying to pull up some of the comparisons of the other vehicles out there because it doesn't seem to be a class leader in basically anything. I mean, we just talked about charging and range.
Hmm.
I think it's okay in those, but it's not a class leader. And it's also not a class leader in, I guess, dimensions. Like it's pretty comparable to EV9 as far as sizing, but it's a little bit shorter. And so it also has worse storage capacity than most all of the competition as well. Even worse storage capacity than the Volvo EX30,
Really?
or sorry, EX90. Um, and it's close to, I'm trying to think, it's a little bit less than the Mercedes EQS SUV. I mean, it's actually like the worst storage capacity of all of them, as far as I can remember. It just wasn't a huge space. But again, this is the global Escalade, not the full size Escalade IQ. If you want crazy space, probably go look at one of those when that comes out. But this is just not, I don't know, it's not the most impressive packaging to me. Like when I was sitting in the Ioniq 9, insanely spacious, even in the third row. Whereas this one was like, okay, you're probably looking at room for four adults and then two kids in the third row,
Mhm.
because adults in the third row are not going to be happy, not going to be comfortable. And it just felt a little bit claustrophobic as well. I mean, the one I filmed with did not have any sort of glass roof situation, which was kind of surprising to me. So I know that the upper end ones should have more nice bright. This did, well, no, wait, the one I did film did have a glass roof, I think. I'm getting cars confused, but
There it is.
either way, it's even with the glass roof, it actually felt a bit dark in there. That's just what my memory remembers. And they have these interesting strake design on the third row windows, which for Cadillac is like a design element. For me as a passenger, I think it would get in my way as viewing the outdoors. So I don't know how I feel about that exactly, but yeah, you can see in the footage here that we're showing on screen, it's like, I don't know, not just not the most comfortable place to be. And you'll know, even this has the optional third row sunroof situation. Not really sunroof, you can't open it, but you can see through the glass. And even that doesn't go very far back, so it still doesn't improve your headroom at all. So that's yeah. Sorry,
Com-
alarm is going off. I don't know whose alarm or whose phone this is, but but that's kind of where I'm at with this thing. Is like Cadillac is cool. I'm intrigued by Cadillac, honestly, as a brand. But then when it comes to like material fit and finish, and again, I know this is pre-production that I'm testing, but that's all I had to go off at the time. And I've tested other pre-production prototypes that felt nicer, and I've messed around with with actual production Cadillac Lyric, for example, which is positioned as a higher end, 5-seater. And even that has some of my complaints of a bit too plasticky feeling, little crunchy noises when you touch some of the plastic, piano black in the wrong places, and screens that they're very proud of that operate okay, but they're just like not quite bright enough. Like I just have little nitpicks here and there. But honestly, they seem to have a decent customer base, a decent fan base, and I see Cadillac Lyrics everywhere. So maybe all these IQ vehicles will sell okay.
I agree. I see lyrics quite often. It's been pretty interesting, as well as some of the other offerings that GM has, and they seem to be selling decently. And I guess compared to some of the competition, I'm interested in seeing how this will compare long term. Do you guys have any ideas, or what can we expect Out of Spec to do with the Vistiq once we get our hands on it?
Definitely all of our normal charging range, all the normal testing. Can't wait to try its rendition of Super Cruise and our early Hogback ADAS Driver's Assistance Challenge. And also just some comparison things. It seems like every time we do a three-row SUV comparison, another one comes up. So now it's like there's like 6 or 7 that are either in the market or coming to market with more growing, and also second versions of some of them. EQS SUV notably has gotten an update recently. Of course, Rivian R1S Gen 2, and the Ioniq 9, the EV9. Everything's out here playing in the same field, and it's a huge playing field, especially here in the States, where it seems like a lot of people they'll have one kid and they're like, oh, I got to get rid of the sedan and got to get a three-row SUV. So hey, you do you. And I have to admit, I've seen a lot of people with, gas Escalades, and I'm like, man, you're just burning so much fuel and you probably don't use the actual storage capacity of your car. But hey, if you're going electric, you're actually burning quite a bit less. If you're charging at home, it's really not too expensive to run these things. And some people just like a big vehicle. So for those people, maybe this is a nice compromise. If you have 2 kids and just want a lot of storage space behind the second row, once again, this is not class leading, but it's also not huge. So I think maybe it's a bit more approachable for some people who are on the fence about getting a bigger vehicle. So there is a buyer for this for sure. I'm curious to see if it's anyone in our audience. I'd love to talk to people once they get their hands on these. I'd love to get some long-term ownership reviews. And something else we could pursue, even here on the podcast, Isaiah, we could find some EV9 owners, people who've had the Rivian R1S for a long time, and kind of get their long-term impressions, because I think these are really important vehicles to cover, really important to see what is important for families. Kyle's, of course, done recent family SUV comparisons. We did a race to Vegas. He also just did like a full comparison review of car seat functionality and storage capacity. And Alyssa's testing dog capabilities. There's no dog mode in this. So it's like, well, will they bring some more competitive features to market, or will they just keep building Cadillacs and just make them more electric? I think if they want to appeal to more audience, they do need to do a few more things that are unique and make it stand out. But I think objectively this looks pretty good, and it's got pretty good specs in a lot of ways, including power. And so if people care about that, power to you. I would have loved to see, a CTS V wagon situation gone electric, but I guess I'm just one of those wagon dreamers that won't ever get what I want.
That would be awesome. That would be why don't we don't get any of the EV wagons? We don't get wagons, period. But
Yeah.
yeah. GM Legacy Auto, we see what they do with their vehicles. Somehow they seem to do quite decent. And I don't think the Vistiq Vistiq will be any different. But look, thank you so much for joining here again, Jordan, answering all of our questions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll feel free to get back to Jordan, maybe answer them for you guys. Again, this is another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.